ag interests involved. I mean, that's
Okay.
not a mutually exclusive group, large landowners and
Okay.
ag. It's still, it'll probably, like I said, we're looking at whatever the 30th is, next Wednesday or Thursday, I can't remember.
Thursday, I think.
Yeah. And probably starting around 5 again. How it's done, whether it be Zoom or maybe something face to face, if we can find a reasonable place where we can maintain social distancing, we may try it that way. That should be finalized probably next week or tomorrow or maybe early Friday.
Okay. That is great. We had a very good session 2 weeks ago with ag interest and mostly ag interest and land interest that we did via Zoom. We did it at 6:30. I want to thank Joey and Jerry for sitting in with us for that meeting. And I think we had good representation. This was all South Putnam. But one of the things they talked about extensively was raising the density and loosening up on the density in the agricultural zoning areas so that they could have more developable land and a higher land value that would give them greater borrowing power with the Florida Farm Credit. So I thought that was very interesting. A couple of the things, I'll just go through my list really quickly. I took several pages of notes and I'm not going to read them to you. But they thought that the higher densities near roads and near more community areas where the population was concentrated would be good. They talked about having the limited density and how it hurts them. It does impede the property of their land. One of the guys said, we are not going to develop undevelopable land. And I think that made a lot of sense. Again, the density kept coming up as something that had been an impediment and had been a problem for these landowners trying to either build a home on a parcel that might not have been 20 acres or having to buy land or being able to sell land because it had to be in chunks of 20 acres in order for it to be developed. Talked about commercial and retail elements in the ag community related to agriculture, and also agritourism being something that we need to look at. We want the county to be its best was a statement that was made, and we want to do it right. Pretty big shoes to fill. Bob Vierstein, who is the member of the Putnam Land Conservancy, who's spoken to us before on sea level rise, spoke again and talked about conservation elements, talked about the fact that in 15 years, there could be a rise of as much as 16 inches along the St. Johns River with tidal surge and with normal tidal changes. And 30 years, it could be close to 2 feet water rise due to tides and due to sea level rise if this is not mitigated nationally. There's a lot of potential flooding that we need to be careful of, and we already know that. We already know about the 100-year floodplains and the 500-year floodplains. They want to be able to cluster development on their land, which we've talked about. We talked about that 2 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, I guess, with Joe, talking about wanting to put, if he's got 500 acres, he wants to be able to put some houses closer together instead of having them spread all over those 500 acres. Transportation, again, is a huge issue. The 207 corridor is going to be a huge asset. But what about the north-south corridor? And I know that's on the plan, on the plans. One comment came up: we don't want to be the bedroom community. We want to be more than just a bedroom community, and we don't want to get too much public supported housing. And one of the gentlemen who is on a committee with the school board noted that Putnam County has the largest concentration of public supported housing in the US, not just the state, but in the country. And people are being sent here from other counties because we have subsidized housing and those counties don't. And that again is another one of those infill outbound things. Need multifamily, affordable housing, moderately priced, high density housing. If industry comes, the infrastructure will follow. And the industry could anchor infrastructure were we to get industry. Maintain our rural nature. Be careful with too much rural urban sprawl. We have a dearth of multifamily housing right now. We need central services, and that's one of the things that's coming up. One other thing was said, natural resources are our pure wealth. And I think that's true. The river is the pure wealth of Putnam County. Infrastructure's expensive, but it will be the key to developing Putnam County. Capitalize on the rural nature, don't exploit it. Another comment that was made was, and this is something I've been thinking about myself, is we need to support the retirement industry. We've got wonderful land along the river. We've got wonderful land in areas around the county that could be prime places for multifamily senior citizen living that is not nursing home, that's not medically related, but just independent living retirement community. I've seen other counties and places do that across the Southeast, and it's always been effective. So those were the things that came up in that meeting. I want to thank Mike and Brian for hanging in there that night. We got out of here about 8 o'clock, and but it was good. It was worth it. It was worth every minute of it because we got some good input. So that being said, Mr. Deeple, how about taking us through infrastructure?
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the commission. Infrastructure element. I struck policy D.1.1.2. While good in theory, it is not how the county has functioned. So I took it out to reflect reality.
Go back up to, excuse me, go back up to D1. Do we really need capital letters for sanitary sewer, potable water, solid waste, drainage? Those don't need to be capitalized, do they? I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Yes, you're right.
Anyone have a problem with striking policy D1.1.2?
Let me add also, it's also pretty much duplicative, this policy of the policy we have in the capital improvements element. It's more appropriate in the capital improvements element rather than here. And although Brian didn't realize it, but I was the one who crossed this out after he sent it to me. So
yeah, those two overlap a good bit.
But that was the reason why we have it in two places. It's more, I believe it's more appropriate in the capital improvements area element where you have a ranking of capital improvements rather than in the infrastructure element.
Okay. Brian?
All right, moving on down. Page DD-4, this appears to be a Mike Brown highlight.
Yeah, I mean, and that's really a clarification of the on 4 or on.
The policy
I see it. Hold on.
D122.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to use that formulaic process, the point system or not? That applies to the point system, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, we have a policy here, and as you recall when we went over the future land use, we discussed scratching the density point score.
Mm-hmm.
That was a mechanism for addressing the bonuses in this case. So we probably, if we're going to follow through with taking out the density point score, we either need to come up with another mechanism for identifying the bonus, for having bonuses for these types of uses and desired outcomes, or we take it out. I think in rewriting some of the land use categories, we have included some of these rather than in a general overall density point score, by requiring dense water, like central water and sewer, to be in place to be able to go to a threshold of density more than 1 unit per acre. So although we've dropped it as a total, I think we still have it. And I just put a note in there from a staff standpoint to go back and just confirm that we still have the ability to obtain bonuses for densities.
Not necessarily bonuses, but once they reach a threshold, they can
increase the density. The density can go up if they've got these.
Right, and that can be a hard
available.
Those can be hard numbers too, can't they?
Yeah, they could be.
Let's crosswalk that back to the land use element.
Can I ask a quick question?
Of course you may.
That was the in-person meeting and I wasn't feeling good that night, so I didn't want to come and, possibly expose anyone. So I missed that. What was I know we had talked about going to like 25 an acre max or something. What did we do? Because I haven't seen minutes on that.
We went to 20 per acre in rural service, urban service.
Yeah.
And
I can't remember the exact, it was 20, 24.
We went to 24.
Yeah.
24, that's right.
In the urban service district, when you've got paved roads, water and sewer, all the basic infrastructure.
All the things in place, yeah.
Yeah, you would be able to get potentially 24 units per acre.
Okay.
We also, and I can't remember the exact numbers, using the same concept, suggested an increase in the density for the urban reserve future land use. And staff is still redrafting the rural residential future land use, which would also result in increased densities if you have certain infrastructure in place where you want to do the development.
Basically, Aaron, we went up in every category.
Okay.
And
even in the ag and ag too,
we're looking going up to 5 per acre, I think, in ag, weren't we?
Well, we talked about going from 2 ag land use categories to 1.
Right. We did just agriculture and combining silviculture in with silviculture and rangeland, I think, in with row crops and farming.
I was just curious, and I don't want to get everybody off track. I know I'll get to review that, but I just
was
curious what our max density went to.
It's good to review it. Don't worry about that. Yes. But anyhow, that's where we're headed with that. There are a lot of places in here I think we can crosswalk back to other elements and probably streamline things. So we'll come into that in a minute. I think there's some more.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Brian?
Madam Chair, policy D131. I believe this is a Mike Brown.
Yeah, it's just a clarification. That ordinance is no longer in effect. It was overridden and given to the Department of Health. So you'll see that in a couple places in this policy.
We want to make sure we get their agency title right.
Yeah.
Florida Department of Health, Putnam County, isn't it, or something like that?
Yeah, we'll
polish
exactly right and have it consistent throughout.
Mhm. Now, with public water systems, do we need to also include Swanee River? We said St. Johns River Water Management District, but don't we need to include Swanee River?
Yeah.
Anywhere we do St. Johns, we need to put Swanee in. Okay. And page DD6, item G, thank you for making that positive.
Right.
Okay.
We then move over to objective D15 and associated policies underneath it. Mike made this comment. I will tell you that we're working on the water supply facilities work plan, which is part of your comprehensive plan.
Mm-hmm.
Still trying to get some final pieces of data to do that with, and I believe Mr. Toriano is going to give me a hand in being liaison to Public Works to help gather up some of that data, right, Jim?
Well, Jim, there goes your spare time between 2 and 4 in the morning.
He's not talking to me. Mike highlighted this, but I kind of wanted to give you a little bit of background on it. You currently have a water supply facilities work plan in place. It was actually done by the Water Management District a number of years ago. Things have changed since that point in time. The data are going to be updated, but it also, because you are now in a water resource caution area, well, you probably were when this one was adopted, then it went away, and now it's back after the North Florida Regional Water Supply Plan was adopted. So that will be part of this, and it's my aim to have it hopefully at the August meeting, if not the September meeting. It depends on how quickly the data can be gotten. Mike,
Okay.
you got anything you want to add?
Yeah, I just made the notes so we remember
Right.
that there may be some input into that objective and some of the policies.
And if you have to do that, just put a placeholder in the comp plan that we get saying this is where this will go. So
Okay.
we know that's coming and we can just highlight that. So just put a placeholder in. All righty, moving right along.
You now move on to sanitary sewer section D161, at least on my copy, it's on page DD-10.
Okay.
Tried to make it more positive.
That form is correct, Brian. I confirm that. So I think that was your note.
Does that
Right.
form have a name as well as a number?
We'll check.
Talking to health, that's how they refer to it. DHH.
Okay.
We call it the septic tank form.
Okay.
Well, we can say septic tank application form D.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, septic tank application form, and then put the form number. That'll be fine.
Right. Give it its common name as well as its designated name.
Okay.
Alrighty, moving on down to B. And again, I think this is Mike Brown cross.
Yeah. That ordinance 87.5 and 80-1 were replaced by 87.8 and 91-03. So we don't need to, I don't believe we need to state the ones as amended by. It is ordinances 87-8 and 91-3. So.
Okay. Again, on-site sewage treatment and disposal, do those need to be capitalized? Just save us a little headache down the road. Okay. That's all you had with septic tank and sanitary sewage?
Yes.
All right. Page
Oh, there's
13, you have a strikeout and just a,
Right, this is making a more positive way of saying.
yep, right. All right, I think we go over to page 14 then.
You're on 14. A number of these were for me to check those references and make sure that they were still good, whether it still is for, in fact, 40C-42.205, so on and so forth down through here. The other thing is I need to check the FDOT drainage manual to make sure that the IDF curves are appropriately cited. Those are just reminders to me to go back and do those tasks.
Okay. I noticed you've got the Florida Administrative Code. That's what FAC is, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Do we need to, are we citing anywhere throughout here any of the state statutes? Are we citing those throughout where those are applicable?
In many places, in things such as this, where the rule is very specific as to formula and or specific application or process that is merely alluded to in the statute. I prefer, and I think this reflects that some previous work that was done, to refer to the administrative code because it actually provides finer granularity than does those statutes.
Okay. All right. So you're going to take care of page 14 and page 15.
Yes, ma'am.
Then we come to solid waste. You all please feel free to chime in, ask questions, talk, whatever. This is your document.
There was just one change in policy D184. Just a clarification. There was a wrong. It's paragraph 12, not 13. So.
Okay. And you've got an ordinance change on page 17.
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe that takes us over to page 20, ma'am.
Okay, groundwater.
Yeah. This policy D110.1 probably needs, at least my recommendation would be to split that, because in 06, the county did a master drainage plan. It is gathering dust on somebody's shelf, not mine. I know I've spoken to the new director at Public Works, and they are seeking grant money to update that plan. They recognize a need to be updated. So it probably would be appropriate to maybe split that policy into two and include separating out updating the former master stormwater plan with a new one, and come in with a time frame that meets the plan of Public Works. And like I said, I've been have some conversations with the director on that, so I think we can come up with something that they feel comfortable with the time frame, and would also have show the ability of the county desire to update it and implement the new one, and rather than have it just gather dust on somebody's desk.
Mm-hmm. All of the county plans and things that are adjunct to the comp plan, if we could put a list of those with that bibliography, that would be really good. So we can cite all of the connectivity here and maybe make it easier to use down the road. And you've got a change in policy number from D 1.1.2 to H 1.1.1 on the bottom of 20.
Yes. Because if the change we discussed, dropping the policy at the beginning of this element, that was the D112, and the H111 is
Replaces
has
it. Okay.
the list there.
Okay.
You then move off to policy D110.6, beginning at the bottom of DD21 and finishing up on the top of DD22. DRIs, developments of regional impact, are no more, and the county doesn't have one. So that reference is antiquated and not needed.
Okay. And we've got a lot of talk here on, well, I guess the wellheads are different from the setbacks and everything. So that's okay. I'll hush on that. So that takes us through the end of the infrastructure element. Anybody have any comments you want to make about that? Questions, concerns? You want to go eat supper? Okay, intergovernmental coordination element. Mike, you want to take us through this one?
All right. Well, first thing throughout this was one of the few elements that staff hadn't gone through previously and deleted all the references to 9J5. As you may be aware or may not, but the legislature got rid of 9J5 a number of years ago. And so you'll see that throughout deleting of this element, deleting all references to 9J5 since it no longer exists.
All right.
But Madam Chair, I think it's also important to note, Mike is absolutely correct. The legislature did repeal Rule 9J5, but they imported a substantial part of it, not all of it, but a substantial part of it into the new Chapter 163 Community Planning Act when they made that change. So for most of these, there still is a statutory backup for these policies. They're simply just not the code anymore because that code does not exist.
Okay.
Yeah.
All righty. Page 3.
Yes. These are comments, I think, some of these we need to confirm that they're in place or not in place. I don't know that I'm just not sure in G113 that we have an interlocal agreement to deal with affordable housing. I don't think that's in existence, but staff needs to check and confirm whether it is or not.
And even if it isn't, we can still leave it in as a goal, as something that needs to be done. Correct?
If there's a desire to do that, yeah.
I don't know that it's.
Just to let you know, we believe we have a comprehensive list of all interlocal agreements entered into by Putnam County, and there is no interlocal agreement in our list we got from the county dealing with this issue.
Okay, Joel, you were going to say something?
I'm just wondering if we need to have one, actually.
Is it a requirement of the state?
Is it a requirement?
No, I mean, your major affordable housing program outside of that, which is provided by the Palatka Housing Authority, of course, is your SHIP program. And your SHIP program through the county services people in not only unincorporated Putnam County, but all of the 5 municipalities. That's really the only continual affordable housing program that the county has. There are times that you apply for CBDG grants in certain distressed areas and things along those lines. But that is really the centerpiece and bulk of what the county does. So I'm not sure it's frankly needed.
Okay.
I mean, it sounds like we have an abundance of it anyway, so we might need to have a little time to catch up.
We do have an abundance of it. All right. And again, referencing 9J.
Mike, let me just take this next one.
Sure.
This was my joint planning areas are.
Where are you?
The next policy, ma'am.
Which page?
G3.
Okay.
Policy G114.
All right.
Joint planning agreements are really neat in concepts, phenomenally difficult and rare to pull off. For example, this talks about identification of police, fire, rescue service areas. You have interlocal agreements for much of that, where you provide police protection in some of the jurisdictions and fire and so on and so forth. Revenue sharing, cool idea, ain't gonna happen.
That went away in 94.
Well, yeah, and so I just question. I mean, these are encouraged within state statute. I don't know how Mike feels about this, but to me, this is nice sounding, but probably not operational in Putnam County.
Right.
No.
From a staff standpoint, I would suggest these aren't ever going to get done. And so why include them in the comp plan?
I agree.
I guess the one area that concerns me is the fire and rescue service countywide. South Putnam is served by the Satsuma Fire Station, and that's 20 minutes away from extreme South Putnam.
Right. But remember, this is policy specifically.
Yeah, I know. I'm just
deals with municipalities.
I think there's a lot of people in Putnam that is suffering from lack of fire and emergency services. Even our Bostwick area, we suffer. As far as a rating goes, where I live is a pretty poor rating. More so than if you're closer to the fire station, it's great. But if you're a little farther away, I'd like to see that improve, but I just can't see it until we start getting some revenue coming in. And
you gotta have that.
You just gotta have it. That's the reason we need development.
Okay.
The most important thing from your planning staff in this list is annexation areas and procedures for dealing with that, because there has been none in the past. You just look at the boundaries of the city of Palatka, and that would be the one area, if I had my say, we'd keep that in there. But again, I don't know that we can get both sides to play together on it.
Probably not at this point, but that is one area that needs a lot of attention, and not just Palatka. You need to look at it in Willaca, Crescent City, Pomona Park, and Palatka, all of them.
Nothing comes to the beauty of the boundaries of the city of Palatka.
No, it's absolutely.
That's pretty miserable.
It is ruffled.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like it.
Just with a little historic context, Madam Chair, and Mike is right. When I was at the regional council, I think we took a run at trying to get Palatka and Putnam County to figure out the future long-term annexation policies. 3 times, I think, Mike, we went to that well to try to help, and it went nowhere. We spent a lot of time and effort on it, but it just wasn't going to happen. When it's driven by water and sewer connections, there's
Until we have water and sewer throughout the unincorporated areas in this geographical area, it's going to continue to be that way.
Well, when it comes to a head is what happened in St. Johns County, where one day I'm driving down US 1 and the city of St. Augustine and putting the lines up one side of the road, and St. Johns County
Put them up the other.
put them down the other side, right? That's when all of a sudden you go, oh darn, I should have had a V8.
Well, you know, coordination is always good. Formal policy might not work, but coordination of some sort or
Right.
gentleman's agreement, we can't put that in policy. All right, page 5. You're just basically changing the language a little bit and taking out some I like what you've done to 1.2.1. Shall review and not propose or establish. Talk about 1.2.4 at the bottom of page 5 over into page 6. You've got it highlighted, Brian.
Yeah, I made notes on my originals. Well, first of all, it's a date of 2015, which certainly has come and gone. You never did adopt or establish an MOA with your municipalities, procedure for citing facilities that are countywide significance, including LULUs. This policy probably came out of a policy, Mike, that was at the regional council for a while. Remember the good neighbor policies following the construction of landfills on various borders around Duval County, or the proposed construction thereof. I'm not sure at this juncture that this is particularly needed.
Okay. Any heartburn over that from anyone?
No, just agree.
Disagree.
All right. Just basically codification going on through page 8. And then moving over to page 9. No. It says 5, but it really is page 9, I think.
Okay, yeah, I was a little confused.
We started numbering over again. So.
It actually did start over again, to tell you the truth.
Yes, it did.
5.
Well, you gotta be creative somewhere. This is mainly just getting that numerology right. And on page new 10, old 6, instead of regularly scheduled, any scheduled joint meetings.
There are no regularly scheduled meetings with the school board and over planning facilities, over the public school facility planning. So we will commit to participate in any scheduled meetings.
I think that's a wise way to go.
Yep.
Any questions, any concerns, any comments you want to add to that? Moving right along, we're into capital improvements. Go back to Brian. Is this yours or Mike's? Who did this?
I think it's a combination. I gave him some markups and then he marked it up. So
okay.
A lot of these, again, references to 9J5 are taken out.
Okay.
As Brian alluded to in the previous element, there's still a lot of those requirements were carried over into the Florida statutes.
Right.
And when they did that, they did change some of the requirements. So the changes to policy H11 really reflects just wording changes in the statutes when they flipped it from 9J5 to 163. And this is the plan. This is the area that this policy H11 has the how the ranking for capital improvements.
Right, right. And that's done every 5 years by the commission?
Every year.
Every
When they
year?
adopt, it should be adopted. There's supposed to be a 5-year schedule.
So it's a rolling schedule, okay.
Yeah, yeah. And when they adopt their budget, it should include a capital improvements plan that just gets incorporated each year. The good thing is when they made that change from 9J5, it's not required to go through a comp plan amendment as it was previously.
Okay, it just is amended to it or appended to it.
Yeah.
Okay, and we've just got numerical changes going on forward. Page HH4, starting with 1.1. Well, we've got a little bit on the bottom of HH3, that paragraph carrying forward over onto the next page. You're basically just removing the rank by priority and available for debt services. So
yeah,
is that okay with everybody? And then go forward, Mike.
Well, page 131, again, reflecting changes in statute, the county is required to do is annually review their infrastructure element for new projects that would fall into the capital improvement schedule.
Okay.
We're not required to rank it, but by statute, so that's why it was taken out of the policy there, but we do have a policy for ranking.
Now, 1.3.3, that's done by the commission automatically, or do we just need to leave something in there to cover us?
Well,
review the budget.
Yeah, I mean, but it's really the reason it was staff had suggested scratching it was not, they do review the budget, but tying it to funds available for the public facility debt service, that doesn't need to be in.
Okay, that's
not
good.
a requirement, and it shouldn't be in the comp plan.
Okay.
No, it should not be part of the comprehensive plan.
All right. And 3.4, or the new 1.3.3.
Yeah. Again, change based on wording changes in the statutes to be consistent.
Okay. And then moving on to HH5, you're striking 1.3.7 through 9.
Yeah. Again, these tied
Debt service.
to debt service and revenue bonds, it should not be in the comp plan.
Okay.
So where should that kind of thing be?
That should be a function of the Board of County Commissioners and their policies, but
right.
not appropriate in the comp plan.
It's part of their financial policy.
Yeah, yeah, because we have, just looking at it, H139 it just says their bonded indebtedness should not exceed 20% of. It's just not appropriate. It may be a decent policy if the board wants to do that, but they need to do that outside of the comp plan.
Okay.
At least that's staff's take.
All right. If they want to put it back in, I'm sure they will, because they'll get this red line version.
Right.
Brian, you had something you want to say?
No, ma'am. No.
Oh, anybody? Okay. Moving on to page HH6. Some minor language changes in the first two paragraphs, and then striking H.2.1.4.
That relates to infrastructure to the former Walmart distribution center,
Okay,
which is 6 feet under, so no sense in having that policy in there.
Okay. And on over to HH7, just some minor changes, and then striking H4 and H4.1 through H4.1.2. This is the one I told you Brian just read so convolutedly. So taking those out, anybody have a problem with that? You okay, Brian? Tom? Okay. Again, adopted levels of service and changing the numbers. HH9 is clean. HH10 is just a numerical change. And mandatory connections to municipally or county-owned sewage systems. That's good to put that in. We get over to HH14. This is a duplicate of the recreation and open space element.
That's correct.
We need it in both places?
The levels of service show up from all the individual elements, also in the capital improvements element.
Oh, okay. Keep them there. Well, we need to make sure we have the numbers equal on both of those. Because I think we talked about changing some of the numbers.
Yeah, that'll be there.
Some of the values. Okay. You got levels of service, roadway levels of service, and then you're taking out page 16, B and C, and then on page 17, 3.1.8.
Yeah, both of those were requirements in 9J5, and they weren't carried over into the new 163.
And then you added H.3.1.8.
I think you just moved that from somewhere else because it was stricken in another area.
Yeah, it was stricken. It was stricken from
Yeah,
up
we
top.
we moved it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you for catching that. I was trying to think of that, but
Yeah.
it's more appropriate here than where it was before.
Okay, good. And then the 5-year capital schedule table.
This is your placeholder.
Okay, that's what we
Comment
need.
about placeholder. That's where it will fit.
And
I
it'll
got
be
a
there.
question. I got a question on that one about it's up to the builders to prove that. Wouldn't that be up to that seems like to me that should be up to the county to prove to the builders that they don't have it or do have it? I mean, how does a builder know if there's levels of service there?
Only if it's part of a project, wouldn't it be?
Yeah, a de minimis kind of, you own a piece of property and you hire a home builder to build your house, that falls generally under other kinds of policies that call for de minimis, just forget about it because it doesn't make a difference kind of a thing. If on the other hand, you're entitling a subdivision, that should be part of the subdivision, subdivision application process.
Yeah, absolutely. That's part of the review. That's
Right.
part of the review. Yeah.
That's
Yeah, it's
But
part
for
of the
individual-
development process.
But for individual homes or individual buildings, would that be the builder or the developer, or would that be, who would do that?
I would think you would take builders out of that and leave it to developers, because if somebody's developing the land, the builder, I mean, it
Builder's
just seems
just
like to
building
me,
it,
the
right?
builder,
Yeah.
you just building the
Right,
house.
the builder's going in with what's already there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's the
I
general
guess-
contractor's headache or the developer's headache to get that through.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can understand if they've got a developer coming in and he's going to make a subdivision, he needs to provide all the levels of service as far as putting in the pipes and
Mhm.
everything and make sure there's water and sewer connections. But still, he has to rely on the county to get that. There has to be a review process, and I'm sure there probably is a review process that whenever he makes his application, he goes through all the departments. Yeah, we can do that, or no, whether you have the the capabilities of handling it or not. But for
That's
him to,
coordinated. That's coordinated, Mike, through the DRC, isn't it?
Partly through DRC and just and our other development review processes that we have in place. It gets done. It has to get done. Our concurrency management program requires it. Whether we could probably say, rather than say it's a burden of one entity or in the group or not, is just say it has to be. So there has to be adequate infrastructure to meet the level of service.
That makes sense, and take out developer and builder. Yep. Kind of rewrite that.
Reword that.
Yeah. All righty. Anything else in capital improvements? Well, we've got the next page. And that's been stricken, and we've got the 5-year review here. Okay. We're doing well tonight, folks. We've only been at this for 54 minutes.
we're going to finish early.
That's right. Economic development. I was telling Mike earlier today that to me, this is where it's all tied together. And this is where everything that we've done up until this point comes together and intersects. And we might need to beef this language up a little bit. And I've talked to him about massaging it some and working on it. Basically, I don't believe there are any changes that were done to this at this point. So, do we want to work through this line by line and try to beef this up tonight, or do we want to let them bring it to us in August? Because I have one.
I'm game for either one, but I think it's very important.
I think it's the key. It's the capstone, the cornerstone, or the keystone that holds this whole thing together. And it's our goal. Everything we do undergirds in economic improvement. So let's work on it and bring it back in August and talk about it. The other question I have is, when are we going to do the map? Mike and Brian.
Mike and I have setting up work sessions. This requires he and I to actually get our heads together in a room. We're working on dates for next week. We should have some kind of concept for you in your August meeting, and then a proposed map in your September meeting.
Okay.
We've got a revised future land use map, but now it's time to start looking at areas to make changes. Some of them are going to be relatively simple if we ultimately, and frankly, I don't want to mess with the map outside of he and I working on concepts until you meet in August, because issues such as 1 ag zone or 2 ag land uses and some of those sorts of things I think are important before we start trying to make wholesale changes to the map. And so, but at that point in time, we'll put together those changes to the map, and you'll have it in September.
Okay, let me ask an elementary question. If we make changes to the map through this process, does every parcel have to go through public hearing?
Dave, go ahead, Brian.
Well, I'll tell you how we've handled this in other jurisdictions. We have handled it by a countywide notification, and then allowed folks to come and see what was going on with their individual lands. This happens whenever you start to do these sorts of things. If you, and we'll have to work with the county attorney on how to exactly do this. I'm not a lawyer, and I didn't sleep at a Holiday Inn last night. But there's got to be a way, and we've handled it kind of that way in other jurisdictions. Otherwise, you delaying yourself forever because
Forever.
you.
I remember when we did the rural centers before, we did them as a group.
Right.
Right.
Okay. One of the things I think we want to look at in the map is, do we need to add back the rural centers that were taken out, or some of the rural centers? They're important to development, and they are important to clustering of development in some of these more rural areas. And do we need to expand our urban service and urban reserve areas? So what if you all, board members, would take a close look at the map? You've got one in your notebook. It's not as minuscule as what you have online. You've got an 11 by 17 sheet. Take a look at that, take a close look at it, and get back to Brian or to Mike. Go to Mike and let him conduit to Brian. Anything that you would like to have considered for change on the map. That way we can begin to think about it and make ourselves more familiar with the map, getting ready for the August meeting.
Susan, I would echo your thoughts on the rural centers. I think, when they were originally done away with, I kind of like the concept of rural centers. So I'd definitely like to see that worked on again.
Okay, we've got a few places where it would be very advantageous to the county and to the landowners in the area too. It's not going to do anything to their property value. It might even make their property value higher because it puts it in a category that's easier to develop, easier to convert into something more commercial. So look at the map, take out the individual maps that we've got in our notebook. Things that you are particularly interested in may not be what another person's interested in. So don't hesitate to send him your ideas, because this and economic development are the final stages. And the commission is looking forward to getting a good solid revision, a comprehensive revision of the comp plan that kind of makes it all cohesive in one single plan, rather than this was the 2000 plan and this was the 2010 plan and this was the 2015 plan. We want to we're getting the language uniform, and that's going to make a big difference for a developer and a big difference for anyone trying to use the plan. So
can you explain the urban, what you were just talking about, the urban areas or the rural areas, or rural centers, I think is what you called them. Well, what exactly what is
rural
that?
center is, go ahead, Mike.
Well, they were sort of the concept was originally they were areas out away from the normal urban areas where you would allow various uses, primarily commercial, and some higher density residential that would primarily support the surrounding agricultural and lower density areas around it.
Intersections of roads that are primary, secondary roads. Yeah.
When they originally adopted it, that was one of the things they looked at, is intersections of roadways. Some of them, I mean, over the first, 20 years did nothing. I mean, some of them. And so back in 2010, when the county went through this process, they got rid of probably half of them, if not more than half of them. They kept some, and there is in certain areas, I think they are of value. I will tell you one from, we've talked about the map and rural centers. From a staff standpoint, I've started looking at the map a few months ago, and one of the ones that I think needs to be actually expanded that we kept is the one at Clifton and 17, recognizing that 17 is going to be 4-lane.
South Putnam, yeah.
In South Putnam. and there's no real commercial down there. And so I think that would be one that I've looked at that, I want to take a look at real closely to maybe expand that. Staff is going to look real closely at where there is planned and either funded or planned infrastructure going in, whether it's state or county, in two areas, or the 4-laning of 20 and 17, not only to look at rural centers, but look at the overall land uses along those areas.
Urban reserve and urban service, yeah.
Yeah, and where the county is expanding water and sewer. Those are prime areas where the urban service and urban reserve would probably be appropriate. So those are the types of things that we'll be looking at. And I got into a lot of sort of off on tangent in responding to your question, but I hope I got to your
No, it
answer.
explained it. It's kind of like down here in Boston. It's kind of like at the intersection of Palmetto Bluff and 17. You've
in
got
fact, I believe
Dollar
that
General and the little stores and stuff.
I believe that was one prior to 2010.
Yep,
I think that will reestablish the identity of some of these areas that we're talking about. So much of that was lost in the past. You had these little congregation areas where those kinds of things were allowed. And as things improved, a lot of those things were eliminated. But I think it brings us back to the point where there's a sense of community then in some of those rural centers, instead of just, everything lies in Palatka or wherever it might be. So.
Yeah.
Well, and I think a lot of the development too was either along the highway or along the railroad.
Yeah.
I live in Lake Como, and that was definitely developed along the railroad. And there was a bustling little community there back in the early 1900s. But it's died out when the highway came in. When new highway came in, old 17 was replaced, and we didn't have a passenger rail stop there anymore. So, but I think there are a lot of areas around the county we need to look at. And so look at the areas in around where you live and get back with Mike and let him know so we can start looking at that. And any other things that you'd like to see, especially the urban service and the urban reserve, where we want to expand those areas.
Yeah.
So, but I think that will be critical. And that also fosters economic development. It fosters housing development. It fosters a lot of things. So do that. One question I had for Mike and for Brian, will the data sets, the narrative data and the numerical data, will that be aggregated together in one section at the end as an appendix, or will it be broken down and appended to each individual element?
You'll have your background data and analysis, which will have, the data sets, the graphical representation of those data sets, the narrative, and then these goals, objectives, and policies will be separate, except for the required map series, because when the Board of County Commissioner gets down to adopting, you never want to adopt your background data and analysis because it is out of date the day you adopt it.
That's right. That's right.
But you do adopt your goals, objectives, and policies because that is the policy of the county going forward. So we separate them out. The background data analysis is good information and it's important, but it should never see the light of day in an adoption process. So that's how we'll handle that.
And it can be separated out by different elements so it's easier to reference.
Absolutely.
It will.
Great. All right. Anybody have anything else we need to go over tonight? We need to look at, you feel concerned about? Mike, you'll get with George and talk about some of the legal issues we need to look at with map changes and things like that.
Yeah.
On that email I sent to everybody that I shouldn't have sent. My beef with that is that we made it, I believe what we did is we made it if somebody was going to create a subdivision that if it was every 10 acres, and the reason we did that is that we based it on that a mile of road was $1 million. Well, when I checked into it, a mile of road's not $1 million.
Right.
And so that, I don't know if we need to go back and relook at that based on the real numbers, because.
Now, what level of service was that road that you're talking about?
Well, that was a subdivision. Like if somebody went in and developed one of the ag areas and they wanted to put
that's not going to cost $1 million a mile for that.
No, it's not. And if they paved it, from what I've been told is it's maybe $150,000 a mile is what it
now,
costs.
Does that include
drainage?
Drainage.
Yeah, it includes the pavement, drainage, clearing, land clearing, and basic. I mean, if you're going through a swamp, it's going to be more, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's not going to be going through a swamp. We got.
I was going to say you're not going to go through a swamp anymore.
No, that's true. But sometimes you have to cross them. It is.
You might have to cross one. That's right.
Yeah.
Long, big pilings. So,
yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, I didn't know if we wanted to go back and review that. Look at that again.
I think we will, and we're going through everything next month. Keep that in the forefront of your mind so we can point that out and go over, spend some time with that. Our regular meeting is the second Wednesday at 4:00. We don't know whether we'll be Zooming or whether we'll be in person. Anybody have a choice?
I much prefer meeting in person myself.
Yeah, so would I if we're able to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Me too. I know everybody prefers it, but based on what I'm hearing around the county, I would expect you're going to be looking at Zoom for another month or two.
Yeah. Wouldn't surprise me.
I'm afraid he's right.
Yeah, after the numbers we saw today and the loss of life we saw too, that really is alarming. So I don't mind doing Zoom. It's not my favorite, but I certainly want everyone to be safe. And Tom and I are here in the chambers. He's way down at the right end of the dais, and I'm in the middle. And Nancy's over at her seat here in the chambers, and we all have our face masks for when we get up and move around. So it works okay. I like to have all this room to spread everything out because I tend to have a lot of paper around me when I'm talking about this. And it's good to be here with staff too. So I appreciate every one of you more than you'll ever know. I think we've done a lot. This has been a monumental undertaking. We could not have done it without Mike. We could not have done it without Nancy Brown. We could not have done it without Brian Teeple. We are where we are because of teamwork. And folks, let's keep it going. The lights are going out in here, so somebody needs to wave their hands.
Let's get out first.
Well, when somebody stands up and moves around, the lights will come back on. They tried to turn the spotlights on for us a while ago, and Tom and I said, we don't want to be that bright. But they just turned it on. I have a feeling we might get warm with those, but it's so cold in here, my fingernails are hurting right now. So you could hang meat in here for sure today. I'd like to get more people in this room when we can, but stay safe, stay healthy, be careful, and keep up the good work. You're just doing amazing things. And I think, Brian, you're definitely earning your money.
I'm having more fun than I should be allowed to, ma'am.
Well, I am too, so that's scary, isn't it? This is more fun than doing a library building project, which I did many of. And long-range plans for public libraries can be really hairy when you get to working with multiple jurisdictions. But anyhow, you all are doing great. Mike, you will get us a notice out about the Boston meeting and how it's going to be. It's probably going to have to be Zoom. For safety purposes, we probably should, if we can pull it off with the people involved. And anything else? Tom, anything?
Thank you, Susan, for all your hard work and dedication.
Absolutely.
It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely, Susan.
I've enjoyed it. That's scary.
You act like you do.
But no, it's been a good thing for me to have something to do. I think most of you know that my mobility has been limited, and this is a good thing for me to be able to work on and occupy my mind while I can't occupy my body. But that's getting better, and I'm hoping to be in my yard within the next couple of weeks. That's my goal. So
Hope you meet them.
life is good. So take care. Have a good evening. Have a good week. We'll see you in 3 weeks. Not
Good.
next week, not week after next. You got 2 weeks off. So this is good. And we'll come back together. That may be a lengthy meeting, but we'll get that. How soon do you think we can get that out, Brian? How far in advance of the meeting?
Oh, at least a week. If
Okay.
not longer.
Okay, if we have it a week before, everybody needs to go through it with their little yellow highlighter and their big red pen and make changes, and we will sit down and go through it again. We'll go through it more quickly, but we'll go through it and make sure we've dotted every I and crossed every T. And we just need to look at it in respect to continuity, in respect to development friendly, but maintaining our rural flavor, rural nature. When we start talking about development in the ag areas, we probably want to talk about roadside buffers and things like that we haven't talked about in the land development code yet, or the land use element. So we're getting there. One day at a time. So I thank you all very much, and we will see you in 3 weeks, and be safe.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.